I believe that there are people who are going through long-term pain, trials, and tribulation. And we can think of situations in life or even being born into predicaments that create that atmosphere for us. Or over the course of your life, you may have something terrible happen. There are a million things that can happen. We have all either been through it and are lugging something with us every day, or we know someone who has. And it carries a lot of, I almost want to say superstition with it, which we're going to break down here in a minute. So there's long-term suffering. And then we have people that are going through a lot of suffering, but they really don't need to be. They went through an incident, granted. Yes, they went through an incident, but they are not applying the tools that we're going to talk about here today. They're not examining the areas we're going to discuss here today. And they're not using it to their advantage and using it for what it is meant for. There's a lot of misunderstanding there, and they're stuck. I want to say this, regardless of the category that you fit in, and at different times in our lives, we could be in both, of course, but regardless of which category you fit in, it's absolutely essential that you are an active participant in your healing. It is essential that you understand no one can do it for you. It is an opportunity for you to examine whether or not you're using it or you're allowing it to use you. I think if the universe could say one thing to everybody about the healing process and applying it, it's that you can, it's that you should, and quite frankly, it's that you have to. Because coming to Earth as a human being, part of the universal order of things is that you are here to grow. You are here to learn. You are here to contribute. And it's never going to end, not even in the afterlife. So it really is something that we have to do. Most people I see, whether it be clients, students, I see that most people don't understand ultimately what pain is for. They don't understand that going through something difficult is connected to an opportunity for growth and lessons. They feel that pain ultimately leads to their suffering. And once they're suffering, they're trapped. It is some type of punishment, like bad juju or bad karma, even from decisions they've made in this life or from a previous life. And we do have some religions, let's be honest, who back that. There is fear-mongering essence that has lingered throughout many religions. And it is all about that punishment and how if you're suffering, you must have done something to deserve it. And then we are surrounded by others in the world who back that. Entire societies built on that fear, that guilt, that suffering, that entrapment. So you really need to open your eyes to how deep it goes, how much programming is involved, how you have been programmed to believe that your pain or your suffering is somehow a punishment for you, doing things that you shouldn't be, being in relationships that you shouldn't be, taking on an identity that isn't yours. Okay, these are all forms of suffering from programming. I do also want to talk about people who want to avoid more pain. They're suffering and they continue to suffer and they actually adopt it. Like, I'm going to just stay in my suffering because the minute I get happy, I seem to get punched in the face with something else. So they're afraid to let go of it because they don't want to have to experience it again. Let's use the example of getting into a toxic relationship. So you don't want to go back out there and start dating again, because if you make yourself vulnerable, if you open up, it could turn into another heartbreak. There are a million different things that we do. And it's important, I want you guys as homework for the next month or so. These things can take a while to surface sometimes. I want you to be mindful every day about areas in your life where you're coming from a place of fear, not love. You're coming from a place of ego and control, not positivity. Where are these places in your life? Even if it's just a thought that you have, a thought where you slap yourself on the hand, you stop yourself from being happy, you stop yourself from exploring something. How have you decided to stay in your suffering because you don't want to get back out there and try again out of fear of more pain being created? Let's talk about the attitude of becoming entitled. When people talk about suffering, I love the saying, you can become bitter or you can become better. What are you going to choose? Well, people who allow themselves to become bitter are feeling entitled typically to other people's energy. They become vampires. they drain everyone else around them. They feel that the world owes them something because of their pain, because of their suffering. And I think of people who get onto the videos or the posts that I put out on social media every day, and they'll always say, well, don't you have a link? Well, don't you have something to this? Well, don't you have more information on this? And I'll say, Google it. Pick up your load and go Google it. How do you think I found this information? They're lazy. They're just taking. Now, that is going to create karmic kickback. That is going to strip you from being able to manifest or have your prayers answered. That is going to trigger law of attraction, which is like attracts like. You are going to have more problems. You're perpetuating the suffering by being a victim. I know on that note, you guys are all probably like laughing. You're thinking of someone you know who's a complete drain, just a total wet blanket. And I think we can all look at our lives and at some point remember a time when you were doing it. It's often embarrassing to think back on a time when you were that super toxic person because of your pain or your suffering. And it's a great sign that in that really bad behavior that we can learn that's an area where we need to do some shadow work. While it's funny, it's not so funny. Let's talk about the fourth area here. A lot of people are suffering more than what they need to, or they are not moving through their pain and making it useful because they have adopted it as their identity. They no longer even understand who they are without it. That is the equivalent of having played with a Ouija board and having some paranormal entity come through and you befriend it and take it home, right? That's the equivalent of some negative toxic energy in the universe wanting to latch onto you and you just befriending it and feeding it and can't get rid of it. It affects not only you, but everyone else around you. You've essentially abandoned yourself and it's become like a possession. So you have allowed for this negativity that was always meant to be used for growth, as a lesson, as an opportunity. You never used your alchemy skills. You never alchemized it from negative to positive. Therefore, you don't know what else to do but accept it as who you are.